Mortgage 101 brought to you by rsrlinks.com/salesmax, rsrlinks.com/salesmax. What if I told you that paying your real estate agent a higher commission could actually put more money in your pocket? Sounds backwards, right? Well, today I am going to show you the math that proves it. I am Ron Siegel, certified liability advisor, helping families build wealth through strategic debt management. Today, we've got a workshop for you. Today, we're covering 3 strategies to maximize your home sales price. And these aren't just for this market. These will work in any market. But before we get into these strategies, there's one thing you absolutely must understand. You have to get your property seen. That's it. That's the whole ball game. We've shared this pyramid with you in the past. You got to price it so people see it. So here's the impact of pricing if you price your property at market value. Josh, do we have that pyramid there? So if you price your property at market value, 60% of the market will see your property. Zillow, RSR Home Digest, Redfin, all of them. They all use different tools, but you got to price your property properly. So if you're 10% above or below, that's going to diminish or increase the amount of people that see your property. 10% above, about half those people will see your property. If you go to 15% above, you're only going to show it to about 10% of the population. 10% below, 75% of the population in that price range will see your listing. And at 15% below, 90% are going to see it. Okay, good. So now, what are we going to do? How are we going to get people to see it? Strategy number 1. Here's the concept that you need to understand. Realtors sell the majority of the houses. I know that people can go on the market and look and find out what the marketplace is saying about any property. I know that can be done. I know that you can find out what the pictures are of a property and take a look at all of that. I know all of that. But here's the issue. At the end of the day, the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of properties are sold by realtors. Think about this concept, and I just had this conversation with somebody on Friday. What was your first job? And the first person I spoke to on Friday said their first job was at El Torito and they made $4.50 an hour. Obviously, it was quite a while ago. And I said, what would happen? I said, did you work hard? And they said, yeah. And I said, let me ask you. If I had went and I told you that Los Cabos will hire you, but you might have to work a little harder than El Torito because they don't have as many people. It's not as big. It's not a big chain. And they'll pay you $6 an hour instead of the $4.50 you were making at El Torito. Would you have worked a little harder? And he said, of course. Do you think a realtor is the same way? They get paid a commission based on their efforts. And they work hard for that. They don't get paid. If they don't get paid. A lot of people say they make too much money. Okay, well, you're not paying them for the job they're doing today. You're paying them for the experience they have over time. So yeah, they might have worked for 40 years to be able to know the answer in 1 minute of what you're talking about, but it's a 40-year education. It took them to get there, and you're paying for all that experience. You talk to a doctor or a lawyer, and the lawyer is charging $500 an hour. Now, is that 1 hour worth $500? No. It's the experience over time that's probably worth that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have hired them. Same thing with a real estate agent. Now, a lot of people say, okay, well, they're going to work for $65.50. No, they're not. That's just a TV ad, and they might do it. They're going to put it on the market, and they're going to just bring you every bid they can saying it's the best we can do because their job is to grind and just get as many transactions done. What if they say right now, you say, okay, well, I want a 1% list for the buyer's agent. Or in this market, we see a lot of 2.5 for the selling agent, 2.5 for the buyer's agent. That's because they don't know how to help you get the most money for your real estate. So let's talk about how to get the most money for your real estate. Pay them more. If your realtor goes into the MLS and puts in there that we can actually give you 4%. Well, they can't do it in the MLS, but they're going to have to do it other ways, and they can do it other ways. But we're going to give the buyer's agent 4%. They can email it. They can put it on social media. They can put it on their website. They have ways of getting that out there. So on that $1 million property that we've been talking about, or all morning or evening or afternoon, whatever you're listening to this, and we put in there buyer's agent commission or co-op, however they word it in that particular situation at 4%, $40,000 potential, right? Because it's all in the negotiations, but potential. That's our listing number. Now, who do you think the buyer's agents are going to work harder for? If they get paid $10,000 or if they get paid $40,000, which one do you think they're going to work harder for? Obviously, the $40,000. Are they hurting anybody? No. They're going with suitability. What's suitability for their client? But while the property is available, while your property is available, that's going to be their focus. They might be working with 10 clients, but out of that 10, they're going to focus on the ones that this property is most suitable for because they make the most money. And they're going to show your property. Now, you're going to limit it. You're going to say, okay, we're going to have this available for viewing Saturday morning from 9 to 11, or Saturday morning from 11 to 2, or Saturday afternoon from 1 to 4, whatever the number is. We want everybody to be there at the same time. We want people to see the amount of activity there is for the property. And again, we're pricing it properly. We're not pricing it out of control, and we're going to do 3% for the listing agent, and we're going to do 4% for the buyer's agent. Now you say, Ron, I can get this done for 5% or even 6%. Yeah, you're right, you can. But let me show you why it's going to cost you money. Let's compare 3 ways to sell that $1 million property, and let's say you owe $400,000. So your equity before costs is $600,000. Option 1, the iBuyer. They're fast, no commission. Sounds great, right? But they're not paying you fair market value. They're buying your property to resell it. Their offering is going to be 7 to 30% below comps. They charge a fee of about 7.5%, and they leave the repair costs open-ended after everything netting somewhere between $300,000 and $530,000 on that $600,000 in equity. Option 2, the traditional agent of 5% commission. Negotiation-based offers might be fast, might be slow. You're probably looking at 5% below to 5% above list price. After commissions, you're netting $502 to $597. Now, option 3, our way. We go with 3% for the listing agent, 4% for the buyer's agent. Yes, that's 7%. But here's what happens. We price the property at about 1% above what other brokers will list at. And that covers the extra commission. And because every buyer's agent in town is now motivated to show your property, we create that feeding frenzy. We're seeing offers come in at up to 10% above asking in markets like this. So you're netting anywhere from $539,300 to $633,000. Do you see what happened? By paying more in commission, you actually net more money. It doesn't matter what the top line is. It matters what the bottom line is. And if you're a realtor listening to this, don't you think the neighbors want to list with you when they see the results you're getting? Just throwing that out there. Here's strategy number 2. So we get on to our next strategy to maximize your home sales price in this market or any market. Payment assistance. So as a seller, if you chat with your realtor, you can actually say, Mr. Realtor, I want to help the buyers qualify for my $1 million home. We've been using this $1 million home, which is pretty close to the median for Orange County, California. I want to help the buyers. And how are we going to help them? Well, what the seller's going to do is they're going to go and they're going to say, okay, we're going to subsidize the payment. We're going to take and we're going to contribute X number of dollars. It's got to be within specific rules and regulations and written up the right way. So if it's not done the right way, we're in trouble because it will trigger high cost and predatory lending violations. We're going to say, okay, on that $800,000 loan, $1 million house, $800,000 loan, 20% down. That's at 6.25%. And I'm not using APR. I'm just educating, not making an offer to loan or any of that stuff. 6.25% principal and interest comes out to $4,925 a month as a payment. Again, not making any offers. I'm just educating you. Now, what if the seller's contribution could bring the interest rate down to 5%? And what if we even called it an APR that way? Because again, just educating. The same $800,000 with a 5% APR is $4,294 and 57 cents. The savings is about, call it $600. Now, $600 a month in savings helps a family qualify for more. So many buyers go about this wrong. They say, I want to offer $900,000 instead of $1 million. But think about it. To get a 5% rate, you need about $30,000. That's about a third of what a $100,000 price reduction would cost. And the $30,000 toward the rate saves $600 a month, the $100,000 price reduction. Your payment barely moves because you're at 6.25%. The math is clear. Offer full price and ask the seller to use a portion of that money to buy down the interest rate. If you want me to put together a custom scenario for you, just let us know. We do these every day, but here's the issue. Here's what you need to understand about the whole process. If this is not done properly, it will trigger high cost and predatory lending violations. It just will. So I want to make sure you call our team early and discuss the issues, because we don't want you to get into that 11th hour. And that's where you find out about these high costs and the predatory lending violations. They don't show up early in the transaction. What happens is they show up down the road. They show up way later in the process, because that's when the compliance check is actually done. So we want to make sure that you're really being careful on this. It could cause a serious, serious problem, and you won't even know you've got the problem until it's too late. Just throwing that out there for you. You want to make sure you're talking to somebody that knows, and that's why the terminology we suggest putting into the MLS is seller has authorized special financing terms through their preferred lender. Who's their preferred lender? Yeah, you're looking at him right here. Ron Siegel at the Siegel Lending team at Ethos Lending. Okay, now let me give you one more strategy. This one is really powerful for the right property. A non-distressed luxury auction. How does it work? Well, the property is put on preview for 3 weeks. Saturdays only, Sundays only, maybe Saturday and Sunday, but generally it's limited. We want to make sure it's limited. Why do we limit the amount of time people can see the property on the auction? Because we want to create the excitement. So on a hypothetical, I use hypothetical numbers sometimes just because the concept is, here's the issue. We're going to look at it. We're going to say, okay, in Orange County, California, the median home price for Orange County, California, we get that from Black Knight. They're one of the biggest sources out there. Orange County, California, median home price is $1,067,000. On the auction scenario, I'm going to use $1 million all the way through today. So on $1 million, basically, we're going to probably, I don't do this. The auctioneer sets it up. They're going to say, okay, let's put this. We're going to put a bidding to start at $750,000. Now let's go back and look at the pyramid. Josh, we have that pyramid on there again? At $750,000, that's 25% below the market value. So 90%, at least 90% of the marketplace is going to see the property. And they're going to say, 123 Main Street, I got to go see this property because they are selling $1 million property for $750,000. Well, it's an auction, and the property's been available for just a few weeks, limited time, but for a few weekends. Well, then they're going to go and they're going to say, auction date is going to be on the 4th weekend, live auction on site. Now, the reason it's a luxury non-distressed, it's also non-contingent. The winner of the auction, if they do not perform, they lose their earnest money deposit, and they're going to have to put in 3% of that $750,000. They say, well, Ron, I don't want to sell my $1 million property for $750,000. Seller has the right in the contract to reject any offer for any price, for any reason, right in the contract. Okay, so now we're going to get all these people showing up. They're going to bid for the property, bidding it up. That's the idea. They're going to bid it up. And in most instances, they bid it to above market value. Now, the seller is going to provide a home inspection, the natural hazard report. They're going to provide everything up front that's needed for a buyer to make an informed decision. Well, if there's CC&Rs, they're available. The natural hazard home inspection photos, you name it, all there. That way, it's not a court step issue. The buyers, all the bidders have an opportunity to review all these different documents, all of the different reports, visit the property, and they know what they're making their bid on. So we like that. We like that idea. That's another way we're going to be able to maximize that sale. The price of the property is going with the auction bidding right there. Everybody gets to play. It's not a matter of we're going to only counter who we want to counter. We're going to be counter everyone. But we're not going to counter anyone because it's going to be done right on site. When the gavel comes down, after all the bidding is done, whoever's left standing, they've got to perform or else they lose that earnest money deposit, 3% of $750,000, $22,500. So they're going to have to go get their homework done. They're going to have that done, due diligence done. They're going to have all their cash available, or they're going to have their financing in place. And they're going to have to turn that into the auctioneer. Is there a cost to that? Yes. The auctioneer that I recommend, he charges 2% for a buyer's premium. The buyer pays it. Your listing price will probably be whatever you pay your realtor, 5, 6%, whatever. Bottom line, that's how that one works. Now, let me share one more thing with you, because everything we've talked about today ties back to one concept: getting the most eyes on your property. And we haven't even talked about social media and streaming television. Think about this. When your property goes on the market, where are people spending their time? They're on their phones. They're scrolling through Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And most listings get posted with a couple of photos and maybe a paragraph. That's it. That's what most agents do. Post it and hope. We don't. We have an advertising platform that puts your property in front of 30 to 50,000 people on social media. Not 300, not 3,000, 30 to 50,000 views on the property that you are selling. Think about what that does for demand. Think about what that does for your negotiating position when you've got that many people who have actually seen your home. And it's not just throwing money at ads. This is targeted. We're putting your property in front of the right people, the people who are actually looking in your area, in your price range, and who are motivated and ready to make a move. But here's where it gets really exciting. When you list your home with Ron Siegel Radio Partner, your property doesn't just go on social media, it goes on streaming television. As soon as your home is listed, it is featured on streaming TV. Think about that for a second. Your home on television in front of viewers who are watching content in your market. Not a tiny thumbnail on a website, not a social media post that somebody scrolls past. Your property showcased on streaming television where people are actually paying attention. So now combine all of this together: proper pricing, seller contributions, the higher commission to get the agents working for you, 30,000 to 50,000 people seeing your property on social media, and your listing featured on streaming television the moment it goes live. That is the Sales Max program. That's how you maximize your sales price. If you want to learn about more how this works, go to rsrlinks.com/salesmax. That's rsrlinks.com/salesmax. And if you're thinking about selling your house, rsrlinks.com/HSG. rsrlinks.com/HSG for Home Sellers Guide. Or you can always call us at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. I am Ron Siegel, your certified liability advisor, helping families build wealth through strategic debt management. Thanks for listening to Mortgage 101, brought to you by rsrlinks.com/salesmax, rsrlinks.com/salesmax.